Hello and welcome to the GameShow Global Esports Cup here on GameShow_D2EM. This is a best of three series between HellRaisers and Arcade Power Rangers, and it's a very important one too. Whoever wins this goes on to play against Vegas Squadron, and whoever wins that series moves on to the LAN tournament of this event. If you lose, you're out. This is pretty much as important as it can get at this stage of play. And, well, to introduce your casters, I'm Grandis Fee, and I'll be joined by Lyrical Dota. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing absolutely great. I'm really excited for this matchup. A whole lot of interesting storylines going on across the board as well. Havost going to be standing on in for HellRaisers, as well as Ivan, currently not really going to be on the team quite yet, but at least getting their presence felt as they're going to be standing on in for this team.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun to see how Hellraisers adapt to these changes in their rosters that have been happening over the last couple of weeks, and yeah, it should be interesting. As far as this game is concerned, we're going to see Winter Wyvern, Doom, Queen of Pain, Io banned out. A first pick, Darkseer responded by a Tusk Spirit Breaker by Hellraisers.
Pretty cool, pretty cool. Darkseer, always a really solid pick there. I wouldn't be surprised, as we already did have see the Winter Wyvern band on out. Potentially another team fight hero picked on up here. Also, you can sometimes see an Ember Spirit, although taken a little bit early might be somewhat interesting. But whenever you sort of pick that Darkseer, it gives you so much potential to team fight and have a huge combination that can just get run together. And obviously, the most classic one that we've been seeing over and over again is the Winter Wyvern. But the other way that you can end up playing is, as I mentioned, the Darkseer. Throw the Ion Shell on top of him. Maybe you end up getting an early drums on him, and then you're able to fight significantly earlier than you would be able to otherwise.
Evolved the Darkseer, the Shadow Fiend, Vacuum into Requiem's a decent combination, but another thing that a lot of teams are liking to do with the Darkseer right about now is play it in a dual lane aggressively, combo it up with either the Tusk or Spirit Breaker, both of which were picked up by Hellraisers. Somewhat of a deny pick there, but in general just a good aggressive duo for Hellraisers that may or may not be going into the offlane together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very powerful combo indeed. I will mention that they have been running the Tusk pretty significantly. Hellraisers have, I believe it's their most pick hero in 6.85 with something like 7 or 8 matches picked on it, and they haven't played a ton consistently. So pretty cool for that one. Obviously, as well, the Radiant Shadow Fiend, as you mentioned. Always really impressive what you're going to be able to do with that one. They do also ban on out the Dazzle, and the Earthshaker was banned out previously. This is a little bit surprising to me. Normally, if you end up thinking about what you want to keep as a Shadow Fiend, you need somebody there in the mid lane to help him out a little bit, somebody to make sure that he doesn't end up getting ganked too often, considering he doesn't have that great escape mechanic. So I'm wondering if we're going to see something maybe like a Rubik out of Power Rangers here to try and alleviate the pressure that can come, or maybe just another hero to roam on in there and just sort of beat away at the enemy mid lane, or maybe something like an ogre.
Yeah, that'd be completely reasonable. I quite like the Rubik. It gives them a way to cancel out Spirit Breaker's charge too, and in general, Tusk's kit is great to steal. Of course, the hero that they want is the Earthshaker, but that's been banned out by Hellraisers. Something with a little bit more AoE follow-up might be in line for Power Rangers, although it's not going to have nearly as much laning presence. Just the teamfight combination with the Sand King Darkseer could be very interesting to see, although that is not nearly as popular as a lot of the heroes that are being banned out. But there's so much focus on the combos that we're seeing between these first four heroes that are picked and banned. It's going to be a Lich banned by Hellraisers. Let's see what they're going to follow this up with the pick. Although Tuscan Spirit Breaker generally puts you on the aggressive, they're not terrible when playing in a more defensive setting, especially the Tusk.
Yeah, absolutely. He can do a great deal of damage or keep you alive depending upon what role you want to place him in. I think that you mentioned there that, especially a couple minutes ago, the dual offlane potential. I think that that makes a lot of sense. You run the two of them together, you get Spirit Breaker a couple of levels there in the offlane, and then he just starts going down. He's going to be able to charge all over the map, make sure that you're able to win his lane. The Chinese teams have been prioritizing this hero pretty consistently, and I think that it's really going to start to show more and more often just the power that he has, being able to charge it. And this was a hero I was going to mention as well for somebody that Arcade could have run. I feel like that's a bit of a sort of block pick as well. Really great for being able to deal with both Tusk and Spirit Breaker. And I think that this is a really great pick here by Hellraisers. It's going to help them accomplish what they want to accomplish. And they can be aggressive with this as well. Starting to run down towers a little bit if they want to. And then once you end up getting under tower, of course, just glimpse somebody back if the TPs come.
Yeah, absolutely. Spiritbreaker and Tusk, although the damage from Disruptor is very limited, it synergizes with the style of play that Spiritbreaker and Tusk are going to go for. They're just going to run at you. And Disruptor is great for isolating a single hero, and maybe that's going to be the Shadow Fiend, maybe it's going to be the Witch Doctor, we'll see. Also in lane is incredibly good against the Darkseer, and in general is a good pick for HellRaisers, and I think it's, in general, very good. Witch Doctor now, for Arcade is going to give them something of a combo with the Darkseer, although not nearly as impressive as something like the Earthshaker, the Winter Wyvern, but more importantly, just a generally good support that's not going to tell too much about their draft. They're hiding their cards a bit.
Yeah, and it gives them that sort of strength in lane as well on this sort of either mid lane or in the safe lane there. If you are going to have to commit somebody to the mid lane, you need to make sure that your safe lane is secure. And against what could be potentially an aggressive dual off lane, which is something that we've seen time and time again in this patch, you really want to make sure that you don't end up just sacrificing your safe lane completely. Wind Ranger is also going to be a pick for Hellraisers. A lot of pressure to be applied in this mid lane here. And I think that Shadow Fiend versus Wind Ranger, as long as you're pretty careful with the Shadow Fiend, like you just need to be aware of ganks, basically. That's the big problem that you end up running into. And of course, falling too low to power shot as well. And as long as you're able to position yourself correctly, anticipate where the Wind Ranger is going to be, maybe you end up getting yourself a high ground ward. I think that you should be fine in that matchup because you can always just stack on up the jungle. And to me, that doesn't seem like this is a lost lane, although Wind Ranger is one of the strongest laning heroes in the current patch.
Yeah, and at a certain point, even if the Shadow Fiend's behind in CS, he'll just double raise down the creep waves and go and farm those jungle stacks that you were mentioning. So as long as he doesn't die, he's A-okay. Arcade might still be looking for something like that, Rubik, to offer defensive support when they are going for the tower dives. But Witch Doctor also kind of fits that role. The Paralyzing Cask is very good when Tusk and Spiritbreaker are just running at you. They tend to get a little clumped when they're going for that chase, and is a decent way to bail out your allies. Another hero, you talked about it earlier on, the Ember Spirit could still be good for Arcade. Granted, Hellraisers have a mass amount of lockdown for this Ember Spirit. The Static Storm, the Shackle, and everything from Tusk and Spiritbreaker is going to be very annoying for him, but the strength of the hero probably outweighs the downsides of picking up into that much lockdown. I think his positioning still would be reasonable enough for them to consider going for a safe lane Ember.
Well, I mean, you see the dream right there as well. The ability to fight early is something that will be given to you. Jakiro, so really doubling down on the sort of going all in for the team fight here. This is a lot of pressure being applied to towers. Vacuum, as we've talked about multiple times, a great spell for setting things up. An Ice Path, really great to lay down over the top of that, as well as Macro Pyro, of course, and just again the general presence that you get in lane. I'm wondering more and more now if they're going to just try and sort of tri-lane in the bottom lane and then have the Tusk or the Spiritbreaker be sitting as a support. Maybe just keeping the Tusk solo in that bottom lane, considering experience is going to be hard to come by.
We'll see. Still, even though it is going to be an annoying lane coming up from Arcade, if they're able to isolate the Witch Doctor or the Jakiro, Witch Doctor incredibly squishy and Jakiro is very slow and very easy to run down, they still might be able to get a good advantage in that lane. So I think they'll start things off duo, but might have to end up roaming the Tusker Spiritbreaker off of that lane once they hit like level 2. The ganking potential of a Spiritbreaker and Tusk once they have access to all of their spells is pretty darn awesome, and maybe they'll be able to kill off the Shadow Fiend even. Still, maybe they are very concerned about whether or not they're able to get to that level 2 mark in the bottom lane, which I don't think is out of the question, and we'll just have one of them pulling top lane. Last bands coming out from either side. It's going to be a Slaughter band for HellRaisers. That could have been a terrifying addition to the tri-lane coming out from Arcade. Vacuum into Crush. The amount of minus armor synergy you get from that hero, I'm surprised that Slaughter wasn't banned earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. It really could have been devastating, but opting to take the Jakiro, I wonder if they could have gotten away with taking the Slaughter if they did want to run it, though. Anti-Mage also going to be banned out. Perfectly fine. You want to make sure that you don't end up having to run on into the split pushing. I think that that's the main thing that Power Rangers are concerned about at this point in time is the potential for that split push and to get pulled apart sort of at the seams consistently. One other stat thing I'll mention, Barush here on the Power Ranger side for the Shadow Fiend, he doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of games played, but 15-5 on Shadow Fiend for all time. Interestingly, on this patch, he's actually 0-1, and the only time that he ended up losing was against a tiny IO combo from Hellraisers themselves. So these teams know each other pretty well, know what their powers are, and feel comfortable giving away this Shadow Fiend at this point in time. Juggernaut last pick.
Yeah. In their last matchup inside the GameShow Global Esports Cup, it was in the group stage, and it was a best of two that traded 1-1. It's going to be very interesting, especially given the stand-ins for HellRaisers, how that's going to affect their play. Juggernaut for HellRaisers is a nice aggressive carry, and I'd love to see Avost play at this game. I think it matches the tempo that HellRaisers are looking to create, get the early farm on the Wind Ranger, get the levels on the Spiritbreaker and Tusk, and then just go nuts. Arcade, although they have a lot of aggressive potential themselves, Darkseer tends to be on a bit of a slower timing window than the Spiritbreaker and Tusk, who only need level 6, and then they're ready to go. Darkseer kind of needs more experience to get higher points in Vacuum, wants to get the Blink and Mech before he's really fighting. Let's see what this last pick for Arcade's going to be, and it's a Slark.
All right. Pretty cool there. So, kind of an interesting little combination here. How do you feel about the Slark versus Juggernaut matchup? Does it really come down to how you do in the early game, or do you feel like there's sort of an inherent advantage? I feel like because of the AoE of Juggernaut, it's a little bit shaky. What are your opinions on that little matchup there?
Slark, as long as he's holding the Shadow Dance, isn't bothered by Omni Slash at all, which is one of Juggernaut's main damage output spells. I think the biggest thing about this matchup, carry versus carry, is just the style of play that each of them are going to be more comfortable with. Slark wants to be looking for the single target pickoffs, find the Disruptor on the back lines, jump him, kill off the Disruptor instantly, and then go and fight 4v5. Whereas the Juggernaut's going to be more interested in taking fights with the group. It's going to be very interesting because both of these teams aren't necessarily all aligned in a single direction, where you see HellRaisers with a team that wants to just straight up 5-man down lanes. They're also adept at taking single targets with their other heroes, even though the Juggernaut might want to group up a little bit more. It's really hard to call who wins that man fight, Slark versus Juggernaut. It depends on how the early game goes. As you said, who gets those first items online. If Slark is going to be able to get the farm, and I think he probably will. This might be a bit interesting to introduce the teams. Dota actually didn't update their names. They changed them on Steam, but it didn't work. Just reborn things. Arcade Power Rangers on the Radiant side will put Tron and that Slark we were talking about. J4 will be on the Witch Doctor. Brash on the Shadow Fiend. Jakiro. Oh dear. I can't quite remember who's playing the Jakiro. Darkseer is going to be played by Cheshire Cat in the offlane.
All right, well, let me try and do my best here as well. I'm assuming Havos is going to be up here on this Juggernaut as well. We do have LMAO on the Disruptor, which I believe
Ivan?
is... Go ahead.
That should be Ivan, the other stand-in.
The other stand-in. DD going to be playing on the Tusk. This is going to be...
Goddamn.
Goddamn,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
And Sashlo is going to be playing the Spiritbreaker, I believe.
Should be.
And last but not least, Aphonia is going to be playing on that mid Wind Ranger. We did it! We did it, everybody.
Kind of. It's a bit of a mess. For the most part, we'll probably be calling them by their hero names this game. Also, sorry, I forgot to change my minimap icon size, so let me go ahead and do that now.
Absolutely no problem. So both runes end up getting traded off. Absolutely no problem. Shadow Fiend getting the bottom one and Wind Ranger getting the top one. Occasionally these things do end up happening with player names, but you know what? It's perfectly fine. Everybody loves the hero names, and Witch Doctor sitting over in the mid lane right at the start does end up dewarding this almost instantaneously. Oh, very nicely done there to be able to pick it on up with the Tango at the last second, get a little bit of extra regen. This is actually a little bit strange because this means that for the duration of this Tango, he's going to be able to trade last hits more effectively, but as soon as that wears off, he's kind of gone with them for a little bit.
He just wants to get that off the table as soon as possible. But another interesting warding happening is the fact that Tusk has gone very deep to block out the large camp from the Shadow Fiend to deny him away a couple of those stacks, and now has a bit of a pincer here on the Witch Doctor, but it looks like they won't be able to get J4. The Spirit Breaker's over towards the sidelines, and although it's very scary to have a Spirit Breaker and the Tusk once they have Bash, Snowball, and Ice Shards all online, for now they're only level 1, and the killing potential is not that great. Witch Doctor's actually really putting the screws to goddamn and trading very effectively. This is going to force out the majority of Tusk's Tangos.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great little rotation there. Witch Doctor being able to be in position. This is going to be a little bit unfortunate for them, considering they were able to block off both sides of the pull camp. So they're not going to be able to deward this effectively. Oh, first blood. Mid-range. Nicely done by their Wind Ranger, being able to combo that up with the Ice Shards to finish on off that Shadow Fiend.
Yeah, just getting pecked down by the constant arrow spam from the Wind Ranger, and with the Wind Run, it doesn't really have much to be afraid of from the Shadow Fiend. Top lane, they're going to pop the Iron Shell on Cheshire Cat's Darkseer, trading with the poor Disruptor, who's only level 1, no points in Glimpse, and this is going to trade poorly when it comes to that damage, but has a healing ward on the ground, so Navostal Bail out his buddy. Ooh, down the bottom lane. Tron is going to take a lot of damage from the Spirit Breaker. Now that he has Bash, but it's just getting kited around. There's nothing he can do. Pounce down to the ground. That's going to be a dead Spirit Breaker.
Such a devastating lane to be able to fight into. You've got stuns after the fact, you've got the dual breath to slow you down, you've also got the pounce just to be able to keep you tethered on in there. And no matter who's in this lane, it's going to be a tough one. I mean, obviously Snowball's going to be able to keep you a little bit alive for a little bit longer, but once you end up getting Jakiro level 2 as well, you're going to maybe, or I guess level 3 now, you might end up just snowballing on into an ice path as well. It's just such a devastating lane.
Oh yeah. Between the Paralyzing Cask and the Ice Path, you cannot be safe committing with 2 people inside the Snowball. They're going to bump into the Witch Doctor, but he doesn't really care much about them. He has more than enough backup. The Wind Ranger is able to play so aggressively in mid. Despite dying, however, Brash is still farming fairly effectively. He's going to land, or looking for another raise, not going to get the short one as the Shackle Shot flies, still gets the long one to connect, and is able to function in this lane, especially because he didn't rush so heavily for those early stat items and got the bottle a little bit quicker.
Yeah, now Power Rangers is going to try and put, or HellRaisers, excuse me, just going to try and push out this lane as much as possible. Shackle does end up connecting. Are they going to be able to find this kill? Not enough mana for Snowball, unfortunately. Oh, just now finding it. And God, that would have been the moment right there. Definitely was close to being able to burst him down. Now, also going to get his clarity interrupted. A little bit unfortunate there as we have the Spirit Breaker chase on through the Wind Range, or the Witch Doctor in this lane here. But Witch Doctor is just continually being able to kite them around.
Yeah, absolutely. And now Jakiro is here with the Liquid Fire. Spirit Breaker, when you attack speed slow Spirit Breaker, his base attack time's so bad that it's really just hard for him to do anything about it. And Jakiro in lane's one of the hardest ones for Spirit Breaker to deal with. In mid lane, also the Wind Ranger was just 10 mana short of getting her power shot off. If any single one of those spells is there, it could have been a dead Shadow Fiend, but not going to be the case. Across the board, this early start is looking pretty even. 1-for-1 the kill score, although the Wind Ranger getting the kill on the Shadow Fiend is pretty huge. We've already touched on the fact that Shadow Fiend is fine playing from behind as long as he's able to farm inside his woods, but the Sentry Ward that has been blocking his large camp stopped that a little bit.
Yeah, and they haven't really been able
Juggernaut.
to...
Ooh. Havos getting really messed up by that Iron Shell creep. He'll survive and be just fine. With the Healing Ward, he'll sustain. Juggernaut is one of the few melee carries that can't deal with the Darkseer's harass, but if there was anybody else that could rotate towards top, if they had the Spirit Breaker or the Tusk, maybe that's a dead Juggernaut. He's back up to full now, but we have a Smoked Tusk in mid lane.
Is he going to find what he wants to find? Looking at moving on up here. Does have full mana as well, so if they do rotate in time with the Disruptor, he does have level 2 now, but hasn't leveled Glimpse, waiting for that moment. I think that Darkseer is just going to back on off now, realizing, you know what, nobody is showing down here in this bottom lane. Let's play it a little bit more careful, and now Tusk is going to rotate back over towards mid. Needs to find something with this smoke. He's committed a lot of time for this.
Yeah, Tusk being off the lane is going to reap a little bit more experience for everybody else, and if this works out, it's amazing. The Ice Shards aren't going to wall him off. Brash still going to take the Snowball. Here's the Cask to buy them extra time, but with the Shackle, they'll not be able to turn around with the double raises. They really have been on point with the Shackles. I mean, HellRaisers, Wind Rangers, been stopping Shadow Fiend from getting off those raises exactly when he wants to, and Brash has probably been denied a kill because of it. Now a Power Shot connecting is going to be dropped a little bit lower. They'll salve him up with the Witch Doctor, but up towards top, the Darkseer is getting wrapped around upon. The Kinetic Field isn't going to wall him off. The Snowball will fly. It's only a level 1 glimpse. They can't quite get in range yet, but they bring in the Juggernaut with the spin. That's going to be a dead Cheshire Cat in just a second. And now looking for the Jakiro. Can't quite get it. The Jakiro is a little too tanky for them to keep on going for that dive, but still very good for HellRaisers. Nice Snowball.
Absolutely. And you mentioned we were talking about it earlier, Havos dropping really low in lane to the Ion Shell. To me, that's just a measure of efficiency as you get the chase down here in the bottom lane, considering he just salved on up afterwards. He's been looking pretty strong this game, and if you take a look at the CS right now, while not the top of it, he's pretty close up there, 33-6, and that's only versus the Slark, who's pretty much been able to get free farm in this lane uncontested, while he's been contested by the Darkseer.
Yeah, that extra kill will tip the scales in favor of the Juggernaut. And, Spirit Breaker is forced to charge away. The Slark won't be able to kill him off, but still applying a lot of pressure. This is a level 6 Slark compared to a level 4 Spirit Breaker. He just can't trade hits. Tron has his ultimate up.
Yeah, definitely. He's in a very comfortable spot right now, exactly where you want to be. If he wants to pretty soon here as well, he's going to be picking on up the treads. He can start moving on in and taking out the jungle a little bit. You do want to save a lot of it for the Shadow Fiend, of course, because he's been a little bit constricted in terms of his farming abilities. The Wind Ranger is actually out leveling him right now and out net worthing him, if that's even a verb, considering she's at 3,200 and he's just sitting right now at 2,700. Not where you want to be at all on a Shadow Fiend, and it's mainly by virtue of being able to lay down that early sentry ward in the hard camp by the Tusk.
Yeah, and also just that one kill on the Shadow Fiend sets him back quite a lot. The Witch Doctor denying away the high ground ward does help Brash feel a little bit more comfortable, but Juggernaut finds the Darkseer top lane. He just runs him down. Under the tier 1 tower, there's no backup.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate there he is able to do that. They were at the same time trying to make an initiation down here in the bottom lane. Slark and the Jakiro were rotating in and were almost able to take out the Spirit Breaker.
Oh, long ice path. They're going to jump onto the goddamn Tusk. He does have the snowball onto Tron, but with the ultimate, it's going to run him down under the tower, charge onto the Jakiro. They're going to get cold feet. They really don't want to keep on diving for this one, and for good reason. They'll pull out. The Tusk will survive.
And again, being able to apply that pressure and not being able to find a kill means, again, the Darkseer is a little bit exposed down here in the bottom lane. Disruptor is going to run away considering it was just going to be him versus the Darkseer, but still, it's such a deadly combination up here in this top lane, maxing out the spin. He does have the mana for it now as well.
Oh, the Spirit Breaker cancels his charge right into a Witch Doctor. Witch Doctor is going to get bashed. J4 is going to take quite a bit of damage, but here comes the Jakiro and here comes the Slark. They won't quite be able to chase him. The Spirit Breaker will be just fine. All he wants down here is his level 6 to get Nether Strike up and running, but bottom rune. Regen's going to be picked up by Barash. The Wind Ranger can't do anything by herself, but here comes the Spirit Breaker, and now they might be able to line up a nice shackle. It is going to latch to the tree on the high ground. Power Shot will fly. Barash very low, but not quite dead yet. The Voodoo Restoration turns for a raise onto the Spirit Break. The right-click damage is almost enough, and it will be. One more shot from the Wind Ranger, and she'll get it. The Slarks now here as a huge fight is breaking out in this bottom rune area. They'll turn for all of Jakiro's spells, but even with them, won't be able to save his life, just trying to get as much damage output as possible. They bring back the Witch Doctor, who has no mana for his paralyzing cast. Ice Shards will fly and wall him off. Another arrow double kill for the Wind Ranger, a 3-for-1 exchange.
Oh man, that was really unfortunate there. We did also see up in the top lane, you didn't even have to rotate the Darkseer over into that area to be able to make this happen, and it just goes to show the power of just the Tusk and the Spirit Breaker. I mean, Wind Ranger obviously is going to be able to be your damage dealer, but the control was the big thing in that fight. The fact that Shadow Fiend wasn't able to get off his raises onto all of those heroes.
Charge top. Ooh, close. Almost cancels Darkseer's TP. Old Juggernaut would have been able to do that himself, but Darkseer, I think he smelled something coming. Cheshire Cat's going to be back in base, but still Darkseer isn't farming better than the Tusk and the Spirit Breaker when it comes to levels, since he hasn't been involved in nearly as many kills. Cheshire Cat is still getting a good amount of gold income, but not really enough. He's not able to really contribute inside these fights. If they put Iron Show on the Slark, that's terrifying, but we haven't seen that come into play yet.
Do end up baiting on out a Dark Pack here down in the bottom lane as well, just to apply that little bit of extra pressure, just like, hey, how you doing? You can't farm completely free in this lane. Oh man, again, Avos dropping relatively low is going to need to have that healing ward back up again for himself, and trying to get as much farm as he possibly can. Has been able to hit level 8 comfortably, maxing on out the Blade Fury, as I mentioned, as well as not taking any points in his crit as of yet, wanting to have as much sustain as possible in this lane to make sure that he gets the farm that he needs. 61 and 16 is the current tally, second only to the Shadow Fiend in terms of his levels of farm, and he is second on the net worth as well, and this is going to become scary if they don't deal with this relatively soon.
Yeah, absolutely. This Juggernaut is able to contribute so much with just the levels and with the base amount of farm, kind of similar to the Slark, but inside the Radiant Woods. They're going to catch an Ice Shards on the Witch Doctor. They won't wall him off. The Snowball will connect. Witch Doctor is not going to die here. With the Shadow Fiend coming in from the sidelines, they needed to bail. The Paralyzing Cask, if they don't have a Snowball to absorb that, it could have been lethal. So both of them will just go back home.
I wonder if the Witch Doctor would have turned right there and casted out the cask.
If they kept on going, for sure, yeah.
Right. It looked like it would have been pretty good with the Shadow Fiend in the area. Triple raise, fully ready. It might have been a little bit of a big ask, considering right now the Witch Doctor only has 2 points in the cask. Is going to be able to attack the Spirit Breaker here, but he's going to be fine. So you wouldn't end up getting like the maximum bouts, as it would have only been 4 at that point in time. So we do get 4 heroes rotated up for this top lane now, looking for a kill on this Darkseer.
Or just straight up taking the tower. They'll cut the creep wave. They have a double damage Wind Ranger, 1 point in their ultimate. Might not even need to commit it for this tower. It's going to drop very swiftly. But the trade in the meantime is that Arcade are getting some damage on the tier 1 tower in mid and on the tier 1 tower in bottom lane. The power of Liquid Fire from Jakiro, 3 points up into it, is already going to drop this tier 1 very low, but not quite as quickly as the tower up towards top with the raw numbers advantage that HellRaisers had in that trade.
Well, and so the Wind Ranger rotates on over to the bottom lane. Shadow Fiend, meanwhile, is going to pressure the mid lane. He's going to get sandwiched here if he's not careful. Completely out of mana at this point in time. Looking for the Omni Slash. We do have a Phase Boots up in a second. Ooh, God, that was a bit of a big ask there for the dive. They're going to catch now onto the cask as well. That's going to end up being a dead Spirit Breaker before he ends up getting off the Nether Strike. Oh, they're going to be able to find the Juggernaut. He needs to run away, and it looks like they're not going to be able to finally catch him. But that was a really scary engagement there for the Jug. He was very close to dead if he got caught by one more disable.
And a really scary initiation from the Spirit Breaker, too. The high ground ward here really paying for itself and then some. If they didn't have that high ground ward, Spirit Breaker's probably able to get into the range of the Shadow Fiend very easily, except for that Omni Slash, and he had the Mango to pop, even though he didn't quite have the mana for Nether Strike, would have been able to use it inside that fight, but they're able to collapse on him. Slark was able to rotate very quickly and brings down the Spirit Breaker on the backlines without any trouble, really. This game is close to even, a slight advantage for HellRaisers in gold, but experience is even in the advantage of Arcade. It's so hard to call how these fights go. It's almost exclusively dependent on map positioning.
Well, and I think, as you mentioned in the draft as well, sort of play style, if you're able to find those pickoffs with the Slark at the start of a team fight, if you can eliminate the Disruptor from the beginning, I think that you win a 5-on-5 here every single time if you are Arcade, and that's really got to be the prioritization, as well as just being able to hit a solid vacuum into Ice Path. You don't need a ton of things to go right, but well, Snowball just going to be able to come on in here and try and deny on out this tower. They're going to be going for the last hit, waiting for the game. Are they going to be able to get it? Slark does end up finishing him off. Now they're going to chase again. Juggernaut doesn't want to use the Omni Slash on top of the Slark, is going to be able to use it on top of the Witch Doctor, and this is going to be a dead Slark, I believe. Can they actually burst him down through his ulti? It doesn't look like it with the Darkseer rotating over as well. I think that Tusk might end up dying if he's not careful. Nice Ice Path ends up connecting onto one. Maybe a turnaround yet again. Charge over towards mid lane, just trying to get out of dodge. Maybe apply a little bit of harassment onto the Shadow Fiend as well.
Or maybe more than that. They have the Nether Strike here. It's going to look for the Nether Strike straight up. They have the Disruptor around the corner to lock him inside the cage. They bounce him outside of the field, but glimpse him right back in with the Juggernaut here for a couple of right clicks. Power shot from the sidelines. And that's going to be a dominating spree for the Wind Ranger. That was really nice movement coming out from HellRaisers. Although, of course, they're not able to kill off the Slark. He is a little too slippery here for them to catch him. They just didn't have the appropriate vision in that area. It's really cool to see them so swift to rotate into the mid lane. They recognize that, hey, Brash is a little bit out of position here. He's posting up on the tower. Of course, he wants to get that tier 1. That's what the Shadow Fiend's natural reaction should be. But HellRaisers were prepared for it, and they had everybody moving in position.
Well, and that's something that you don't always see when you get stand-ins like this. A really solid team dynamic. A call gets made instantly. Everybody follows. They get a solid pick off on a key target, and they end up coming out ahead from that engagement. It's not something that you always end up seeing, and normally you don't end up having a sort of newly formed, well, I don't want to say newly formed team yet because we don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but a team that at least has been formed around these stand-ins as well, gelling this well early. And they've looked really great, 3-7 as you mentioned on the score. They've been able to execute shutting down a Shadow Fiend's farm on a team that knows how to be able to get him the farm that he wants. And it's looked really, really good out of HellRaisers. I don't think that Power Rangers by any means have been playing badly this game. I think that HellRaisers have really just taken this lead themselves.
Even with the lead that's coming from these kills, the Shadow Fiend is out CSing everybody on the enemy side and is keeping close to the level of net worth of the Wind Ranger and Juggernaut, but we're not seeing that translate inside the fights. The mechanism wasn't on his person. If he has the mech there available to heal him up, maybe they're even able to turn. But, yeah, Arcade for now are a little bit on the back foot. By no means are they out of this game. This is an advantage that they can fight into, but HellRaisers are executing quite well. The issue arises once you have the mech delivered on the Shadow Fiend and the Shadow Blade on the Slark. The next power curve for Arcade esports to hit.
Yeah, definitely. It becomes a lot more difficult to deal with. I think probably we'll end up seeing the rotations continue to pay off to a certain extent. Like it all depends upon the first movement and versus the second movement. So the first movement there was Arcade rotating down towards this bottom tier 1 tower. You ended up having the Darkseer be able to TP on in. And then after the fact, when all of HellRaisers rotated towards the mid lane, they didn't have the TPs on cooldown or off of cooldown for the heroes that needed to move over there. And now we'll see if they're going to be able to make something happen down in this bottom lane. It seems unlikely that they're going to be able to apply any type of pressure to this tier 2 tower, but instead we'll probably just try and farm on up continuously on the Slark. And as you mentioned, finish off that Shadow Blade. He's only about 600 gold away from finishing it off. So if they're able to really execute effectively, maybe you find a pick off over the next 40 seconds, and then you can try and push down another objective.
Another thing to wait for is Darkseer's Blink Dagger. Since the Shadow Fiend's the one to pick up the mechanism for the team, they are going to have a Blink Vacuum initiation down the line. But Darkseer is level 7, no points in Vacuum yet. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody. It's not going to be until about level 9 where Darkseer wants to really get aggressive. But the power of Darkseer plus Jakiro, it's not something we've talked about a lot this game, but it is probably something we're going to see about the 25-minute mark.
Yeah, definitely. That's an incredibly potent combo and relatively easy to line up as well. If you think about the other spells that are sort of normally comboed with a vacuum, potentially like a Requiem, for instance, you have to time it really appropriately, or a Light Strike Ray, other things like that. If it comes a little bit too late, all of a sudden this great team fight setup and combination that you have doesn't work well together. And if you're able to Ice Path on top of a spot and then vacuum them onto said same spot, all of a sudden you have a free disable. And considering as well that the Ice Path is on a 9-second cooldown once you end up hitting those maximum levels where we expect these team fights to go, 2.2-second duration, and then after the fact as well, being able to potentially follow that up in another 6.8 seconds is really, really great in terms of your ability to contribute to the team fights.
Yeah, Avos is going to drop about half HP, but because of the lack of TPs on Arcade, it's going to take them a while to reinforce here, and they're probably not going to be able to save this tier 1 tower, I want to say. 17 seconds on the sidelines, that's no mech from the Shadow Fiend, and without it, this is going to be a free tower for HellRaisers. More map control going in their advantage. The word vision for either side is a little bit slim. The D words from both of these teams have been on point. Just a little bit of vision around the river area for both sides.
Yeah, and we're going to see the Spirit Breaker just rotate back on over to this top lane, perfectly content to do this, keep getting his farm and his levels on, getting more points in that bash as well as the charge, depending upon where he wants to go. And Tusk actually is looking to pick on up a headdress here, so he's going to look to be the mech carrier. This is something that we've seen more often. I kind of still like the Blink Dagger a lot. Do you think that there's a particular reason why they ended up going for the mech on him here, or is it just that they feel like they need that mechanism and he's the most likely person?
A combination of both, really. The Tusk here, it's going to be difficult for him to farm up that Blink Dagger. First and foremost, getting the headdress and the buckler, it's a lot more forgiving when you're saving up your gold that way. But also, the Tusk isn't going to be the first one in the fights more often than not. They have the Spear Breaker to do that, or a Shackle lands. He's mostly going to be there for follow-up and trying defensively to save allies from that combination from Arcade. I like the mechanism a lot on Tusk in general, and I think this game is no exception, as long as you have somebody else to start the fights for you, and they do.
Cool. Well, that seems like it could be pretty good here. Juggernaut also going to be going for the Sanjanyasha. It's being brought out to him currently on the map. I feel like this is just such a strong build. Your ability to fight early while not really compromising as much in terms of your late game farming potential. You can build on into the Sanjanyasha, then eventually later upgrade on into the Scotty if you want as your second item, or, depending upon if you need something else there, you can, build on into, if you're going up against something like a PA, which we've never seen ever in our lives again. I feel like we could go for into an MKB or something, but I like the stats that it gives you. It seems like this item has really come back into sort of popularity recently.
Yeah, it's a jack of all trades item. Like, the current metagame is so centric around early fights and early burst damage that the extra stats, especially for a Juggernaut, are very important. Or even for a Shadow Fiend. I wouldn't be surprised if that's his next pickup. It is just generally very good. 3 to 7, things have slowed down a little bit, mostly because of all of these pauses. HellRaisers are going to start interrupting the enemy's jungle farm. This isn't something that Arcade can punish easily, but we're about to get that Shadow Blade for the Slark. He has it now, he's hasted up, and it looks like Tron's going to push in the top lane with the Darkseer and the Jakiro.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit of a trade again as we do end up seeing HellRaisers come on down here to this bottom lane. Another power curve item pickup that you were talking about as well is going to be the Aghanim Scepter finished on this Wind Ranger just now with a level 2 focus fire as well. This is going to be pretty effective. You know, you're going to be able to, you don't have the minus armor that you sometimes see. Like, I think back to that Slardar ban and potentially being able to pick that up. It changes the dynamic for the Wind Ranger where all of a sudden you don't need another damage item necessarily because you're going to be able to deal more damage with each individual last hit coming out from her. So they don't have that dynamic necessarily.
Disruptor. He's going to walk up the high ground. Tron's going to Shadow Blade and might be able to pursue here. Between the tier 2 and the tier 1, he's going to open up into the Disruptor, but misses the pounce. So with it, it looks like Disruptor is going to waddle back towards his tier 2. He's fine, if only just.
But sneaking the Roche at the meantime, they're going to be able to have the Healing Ward, Juggernaut finishing off his item, as well as the Aghanims up on the Wind Ranger. They're comfortable taking this, and they're going to be able to get it scot-free, not really even having to deal with... They can come back and defend this tier 2 if they want. It looks like they're going to.
They're going to try for it. Ice Path is going to stun up the Juggernaut, and that is going to delay this push. Tier 2 isn't in deny range. She gets some pretty high damage, but they have vision on the Jakiro with the charge, so the Snowball will fly, cancels the TP, power shot, one more right click, and that's going to be a kill for HellRaisers. Across the board, that is just a nice trade for them. Roshan, an extra kill on top of it. You can't ask for much more, especially considering the fact that Disruptor survives. That was one of the first usages aggressively of that Shadow Blade, and it doesn't really do anything for them. They might even be able to get this tower to die in mid. Looks like they'll succeed.
Yeah, going to be able to get that one really nicely done. Good recognition as well. The Spearbreaker charged on in, realizing if he didn't, he wasn't going to be able to get that deny off, and was able to kill on off the other creeps. They use the glyph to make sure the little catapult doesn't end up taking it out. Then they finish it off. Just, again, HellRaisers playing very, very well across the board in every aspect. They've had great rotations. They've been able to gel well as a team. Good calls, good recognition. And they've looked like a very strong team. And now they're catch Tron as well, maybe. Nether Strike does end up coming out. They need another bash potentially to be able to find this one. Oh, Slark, is he going to be able to get out of here with the surge? I think that he's safe now at this point in time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They needed that one extra bash that you were talking about. Not going to find it, dude. Jedivine going to bump into the Juggernaut, and Juggernaut is more than happy trading hits here. He's going to drop the Omni Sash. Glimmer Cape is going to pull that over towards the Jakiro. Charge into the tower will be cancelled. And just like that, HellRaisers have effectively wasted an Omni Slash. I mean, it's worth it to go for that attempt if the Jakiro's not around the corner, but Glimmer Cape is a pretty good way to deal with that. Still, they're able to fight even without the Omni Slash, despite that being a really big contributor inside these team fights. Juggernaut has his Aegis, and probably will be fine.
You know, I wonder, obviously it was the correct move to try and go for the couple of right clicks as they're skulking on through the jungle trying to find... Ooh, Slark actually going to be able to run on into the Tusk.
Oh, he finds the Disruptor. This is the target he wants to go on. This time the bounce is going to connect, and that's a dead Disruptor, although with the Static Storm there. No, they bounce Tron out of it. Maybe he can get out. He's still silenced and stuck in it with another strike in the charge, or just the charge, rather, and a couple of right clicks, excuse me. That's a really nice kill for HellRaisers. This Slark is not able to pick up nearly as much momentum as he'd like to be with the Shadow Blade. And now in mid lane, they're going to chase forward for the Jakiro. Glimmer Cape TP cancelled by the charge. Jakiro is going to be stuck here as the Spirit Breaker charges forward. They'll throw the cask as well as the Death Ward, but the Spirit Breaker survives on about half HP. Chasing forward for the Jakiro. One more right click from Havost is going to do him in. And now the Shadow Fiend, the Witch Doctor, kind of need to run. Barash is going to turn for a raise, but that really just doesn't do enough damage. Now Barash is going to be chased down. He has the mech, he has the Sange, very tanky, but is he quite tanky enough? They have the Nether Strike, bouncing it back in with the Focus Fire and everything thrown his way. He is going to go down. Spin on the Juggernaut. This cask will not bounce any further. 11-4. HellRaisers are getting so much momentum, and I think we'll transition that into talking about Cheshire Cat's Midas pickup on the Darkseer. It feels kind of like a necessary evil. They're getting pressured now. He's not able to get the levels for that huge vacuum combo that we've been talking about a lot this game, but he's not able to contribute at the same time inside these fights. Arcade effectively are fighting 4v5 since Cheshire Cat hasn't been there.
I got me chill. I love to see that. It just confirmed one more thing in my head that Havost is still crazy and able to run on down heroes consistently. That was awesome to see. He just ran right on into the Shadow Fiend, no fear. Of course, he had the Aegis back on up as well, so he was never going to be able to be in danger of getting killed. He knew his teammates were right behind him, willing to keep him alive, and it was really great to see that little combo. All starting again with the Slark trying to take on out that Disruptor. Was able to find him, but didn't have the backup to keep him alive, unfortunately, that time around. And you mentioned as well that the Darkseer Midas, I think that again it is like you said, that necessary evil. I wonder if they're going to be able to keep the pressure off of them going into the, like, if they lose the next two towers, are they going to be able to survive it nonetheless?
Here comes the
And I'm not
Shadow
really
Bladed
sure.
Ion Shield Slark going under the Juggernaut. They'll vacuum him back. Right click damage. Will they be able to bring down this Aegis off the Jug? He's turning a lot of damage onto Tron. Here comes the Snowball. Static Storm Kinetic Field. Not going to lock on Tron. He's swift enough with the ultimate and will get out towards the left-hand side. I don't think they quite have the chase, but they will kill the Jakiro in the top lane. His Spirit Breaker is able to jam that one home solo. Slark barely survives there. Tron, once he gets those additional stat items on top of the Shadow Blade, will be fairly survivable, or maybe even a BKB. He's just not living long enough. Cheshire Cat is successfully hiding. He will evade the ice shards, so he will be just fine. Or rather, I'm not sure what that was that they were throwing in there, but still, he's going to live, and it looks like Cheshire Cat might consider cutting the creep wave here.
That's gonna really piss off that Dusk. He had the ice or the sigil up ready to throw it down if he wanted to use it. He ended up throwing out the ice shards as you mentioned instead, and because of that, you end up seeing another charge on in. They are going to be able to catch him, not quite. Oh, they can't interrupt the Spirit Breaker charge. He's going to be able to get away from that one as they jump on in again with the Slark. Disruptor does not have the glimpse on back to catch him because of the vision, and it looks like they're just going to continue to be pulled apart every little way that they go.
Juggernaut will TP top lane. This tower push up in top lane is going to be unsuccessful. The Shadow Fiend is left mostly alone, and they have ward vision by that camp. Brash is going to be charged up, and I don't think he's able to get out of here. They don't have the mana quite for that Nether Strike, so maybe I spoke too soon. The Juggernaut doesn't go for it because of the lack of Nether Strike, and maybe just because that farm is really juicy. They get the tower deny still. 12-4, HellRaisers are the ones with momentum. The Slark gets a courier snipe. That's very nice for them, but I don't think that courier was holding anything major of consequence. It is Juggernaut's Orb of Venom, which might slow down the Scotty a little bit, but worst case scenario, just buy another Orb of Venom. It's not that big of a gold investment.
No, definitely. It certainly isn't. I also like here as well the Spirit Breaker Midas pickup, which is another thing that ended up happening. It seems to me to make a lot of sense as we get another jump on into this jungle. They want to see if they can find somebody. Tron does not have vision quite yet, is going to run into the Disruptor yet again. Ion Shell on top of him is going to be a kill. Static Storm as well as Kinetic Field drop, but not going to hit onto anybody. Going to jump after the Witch Doctor now. Does end up not hitting onto the cast completely and totally. Macro Pyre as well as the Ice Path on top of everybody. Not going to be able to make it happen. Snowball is not quite there as the Vacuum Wall, everything gets leveled against them. 3 heroes dead. Conspicuously, the Juggernaut and the Wind Ranger were able to stay out of that fight, though, and don't end up losing their lives.
It was a bit awkward for HellRaisers. You lose your Disruptor at the beginning, maybe blow Static Storm Kinetic Field, can't do anything, doesn't really contribute much to that engagement. Then you go in with the Spirit Breaker, try and kill off the Squishy Witch Doctor in the backlines, and they just trickle in one by one, and that's the ideal situation for Arcade, really, when they're able to just focus one target to the next and get those kills consistently. For HellRaisers, the Midas pickup on the Spirit Breaker, you mentioned it, if only briefly, compared to that of the Darkseer's Midas, Spirit Breaker's still able to fight, and as a hero doesn't farm very effectively, so this is going to make sure that he stays ahead, whereas the Darkseer's Midas is almost exclusively made so that he can hold on inside this game and not fall too far behind. But it's paid off here as he has the maxed out Vacuum and the Blink Dagger, which is really what we've been waiting for, and maybe we'll get to see another big Ice Path Macro Pyre combo in the near future.
Yeah, and I think that if they're able to really find, everybody in the also as well, I think that Roche is going to be a big component to this next engagement. And if they're able to find them in the middle of that Roche pit, that is going to be the moment where Arcade is able to turn this back around. Power Rangers can find the kills that they want, particularly on those core targets, because while they have been able to find the kills, they haven't been on this Juggernaut, who's now is 5-0-1, 162 last hits. He's got his 2 ultimate orbs and is going to be finishing off his Scotty in just a couple of minutes here. So I really feel like they need to be able to slow him down at some point, and it's starting to get to the point where it's quickly out of hand, because while the Shadow Fiend is incredibly tanky and has been able to keep up with the farm to a certain extent, he's still 2k gold behind the Juggernaut, and I don't think that he alone against Jug is going to be able to stand up in the man fight.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think a single hero on Arcade, and even a combination of 2 heroes, could convincingly take that man fight. The big difference here, the Wind Ranger and the Shadow Fiend are about on even footing. The Wind Ranger is slightly ahead in gold, but hasn't invested that towards her item. It really is the Slark that has lost his momentum. 3-1-3 by no means is bad for the Slark. He's tried to play aggressively, but hasn't been able to find those openings, and just doesn't farm as quickly as the Jug. Spirit Breaker's going to charge through mid. He doesn't know the enemy team is here, and we're paused. But I have a feeling the Spirit Breaker is dead.
Yeah, that's probably the case. Smoke not broken either, so no vision of this is going to be is going to be coming about in a second. I think also as well, you mentioned they're not being able to catch up, not being able to farm as quickly. The other thing is that as far as what we've talked about in terms of the sort of whole dynamic of this game, a Slark wants to find pickoffs, as you're about to see here in a second, I'm sure. And you can't find that as effectively and still farm. Like if you're going to try and go and find those pickoffs on the disruptor, they have to work out for you to be able to accelerate. And since they haven't found him, that hasn't happened. And I think that that's one of the big reasons why he's sort of fallen off a little bit as he's about to find a pickoff on the Spear Breaker. 1, 2, 3. Can they get it in time? Nether Strike does end up getting canceled there as well. There's the Static Storm, maybe dropped. Not quite yet. Getting caught by the cask as well. Witch Doctor was able to kill off the Spear Breaker. Can they find the kill onto Tron? Walrus Punch down as well. Omni Slash onto everybody. He's going to be able to avoid the damage from that one. Tusk is the only one caught by the wall. Meanwhile, Juggernaut is just hitting down that Witch Doctor, able to kill him off. Wind Ranger take out the Slark in the background. Darkseer killing the Tusk. Do they have enough to burst down this Wind Ranger? I don't think that they do, with the Wind Run keeping her alive and just going to be able to get her way out of there. Healing Ward still in full effect. Disruptor Kinetic Field does end up catching. We do have another glimpse up if they want to bring him back. Are going to be able to find the Shackle? Maybe? No, not quite. Going to use instead just bursting him down. Oh god, the Glimmer Cape almost kept him alive, but it looks
Disruptor!
like...
His illusion kills him off from the Darkseer, looking for the TP. Jakiro gonna make it out alive. A mess in the mid lane. What could have been a very clean kill on the Spearbreaker isn't because of HellRaisers' very swift reactions, and they're able to turn that around nicely. Although it is a 3 for 3, and on paper, the heroes that hit the deck are... number-wise, even. Not when it comes to their net worth. Oh, Darkseer gets caught out on the retreating end. That's going to be his killing spree down the tubes to the Wind Ranger. She's able to mow him down with the Focus Fire. That's another hero tallied onto HellRaisers, but really, them killing off the Shadow Fiend and Slark and Juggernaut and Wind Ranger surviving is really what makes that fight for HellRaisers.
And Roche respawned 10 seconds ago. Like, this is just
perfect.
Really working out great for them. And they're going to be able to take this no contest possible. Very, very frustrating. I mean, you take a look at net worth right now, 4K lead for them. It's going to start to accelerate to about 5K. EXP as well. We're sitting at about 6,000. They're in a very comfortable spot. And with the Aegis back up, we talked about how important this was going to be going forward. The fact that Arcade needed to not only be able to deny them the Aegis, but also they wanted to be able to take that fight around the Roche pit. And because they weren't able, like you saw the vacuum wall, it only ended up hitting onto the Tusk, and then Disruptor ended up walking through it later. It's just one of those situations where you lose an opportunity to fight on the grounds that you want to take.
And now Tron going to get spotted out, glimpse into the Static Storm kinetic field, but again able to walk out of that. Tron is an incredibly slippery fish, but they're charging forward. These heroes probably can kill off the Slark if it is only the Slark, but Darkseer's coming in from the lane. With the ultimate, Tron should be able to retreat here. I don't see them being able to catch him up, especially now with the Surge dropped by Cheshire Cat, but oh goddamn, he wants the Darkseer. Won't be able to find him. HellRaiser is posturing very aggressively, but now in mid lane, maybe the Juggernaut and the Wind Ranger can find this Jakiro. They have the vision, they have the power shot, but the Shackle isn't quite in range. Wind Ranger wasn't able to snag that extra kill. Nobody will die across the map. That's the end tally.
But everybody getting hurt, that sort of seemed to be the theme of this game so far, is that everybody ends up taking damage, and then only when the big team fights end up happening are we actually going to be seeing those kills. DD rune down on the ground. This is the money rune for the Wind Ranger. Might opt to take a fight with this one, considering they've got all of these ultimates. Static Storm actually not up for another 40 seconds, considering they use it over there trying to catch the Slark.
They're leaving Havost in mid, though, as they go for that top fight. They're going to get the Snowball. They cancel a TP for the Witch Doctor. Walrus Punch will kill him off, and Juggernaut is fine in mid. He is not, or actually, did he get the last hit on the tower? I think it was denied. No, it was destroyed by the Dire. That is nothing but wins for HellRaiser. Slark, Witch Doctor, and a tier 2 mid.
And they didn't even have to pop the DD, so this is going to be at least one tier 2 tower, possibly more. I think that they can commit just these 3 heroes up top, and then the 2 heroes in the mid as soon as this next creep wave comes in, although it's going to be a ways away. I think that they should go... All of the creep waves are actually really far separated from where they want to be, so they can't actually push up high ground right now.
That's unfortunate for them, but HellRaisers are just waiting behind this jug. They're going to start hitting this tower. The backdoor protection is there. Juggernaut doesn't seem to care. He's hardly taking any damage and has a healing word, so really there's not much that he has to worry about. They'll wait for the next creep wave eventually. With a double damage Wind Ranger, maybe they'd be able to do damage through backdoor protection, but it looks like they'll lose the tier 2 tower in bottom lane All while that's happening, the Darkseer and Jakira have been chipping away there. That tier 2 tower doesn't mean much strategically, but it's still nice for Arcade, especially if they're able to take this fight. This is one of the best chances for Arcade to come back into this game. Of course, the exception being the Aegis in the double damage room, but DD's about to expire. They have a really great high ground defense lineup, but it won't be enough to stop this tier 3 from going down. They kind of need to go now. They'll blink in. There's your vacuum only onto Habos Juggernaut. They'll throw the shackle. The static storm is going to lock down Tron. The high ground misses, but the Omni Slash won't. Monster kill for the Wind Ranger. She mops it up, and now Barash is stuck inside the shards. He's going to get charged up. The charge will connect in the Witch Doctor too. They're getting kited around a little bit. The ultimate from the Witch Doctor will be thrown as Juggernaut is going to be dropped low, but still has the Aegis for another minute and 40 seconds. They force out the buyback, and HellRaisers will retreat. Wait for round 2.
Yep, getting ready for it. They do still have Guardian Greaves about to be back off cooldown in a second by this Tusk, so I think that they might want to jump back on into this one, even if you just burst on down and let the Aegis expire. To me, that seems like the best opportunity for them. If they wait around too much longer and don't get an Aegis out of this, I think that that might be a bit of a mistake, but they're at least going to walk back up. Wall is down now as well. The vacuum didn't end up hitting onto anybody, so yeah, they're going to be able to at least apply a lot of pressure down to these barracks. Want to get the melee one, at the very least wrap around the other side. Darkseer is going to be here. Oh, Slark, excuse me, wants to find somebody, is going to end up getting separated from the herd, though. He might end up dying. Oh, nice pounce up into the high ground, but at least one of the barracks still should fall. Waiting for the second jump.
It's going to be the melee. They have focus fire for the range barracks too. Full set in mid for HellRaisers. That's a nice vacuum. Ice Path Macro Fire. They'll bring down the Disruptor, sure, but can they bring down the Jug and the Wind Ranger? That's a big question. Snowball forward. It's going to catch up both Tron and Barash. They have the vision on the Slark. They'll power shot through. That's a dieback for him, and now getting bashed. Barash really can't survive here. I see no way out except for death. Godlike for the Wind Rangers. She's able to shoot him down. Buyback for the SF. They really want to hold, but HellRaisers, can they be repelled? The only silver lining for Arcade is that they have the Aegis expiring, but good game is called. They're going to move on to game number 2. A really nice performance coming out from HellRaisers. Of course, this advantage early wasn't huge, but it always felt like HellRaisers were the ones making the rotations. Even if the advantage wasn't big in the metrics, it felt big with the momentum.
It felt like they, like you said, yes, big momentum, big in terms of their ability to recognize situations and make the correct calls. To me, one of the most clear examples of this, again, is that rotation down towards that bottom lane. Darkseer comes on in to try and keep his safe lane carry alive, wanted to make sure that Slark didn't end up getting taken out. As soon as they see that teleport, they rotate in towards that mid lane, charge in with the Spear Breaker, follow up with the Wind Ranger, power shot from afar, and they end up finding that kill. It's just a really clean, clear executed strategy. And it felt like they were able to make it happen. And again, 10-0 on the Wind Ranger, 6-0 on the Juggernaut. GPM, we're looking at 578 as well as 515. Just everything that you want to see out of your safe lane and your mid.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be moving on to game number 2 as Arcade are on the brink of elimination here. HellRaisers, if they win this series, will move on to fight Vega Squadron for the spot in the LAN tournament later down the line. See you back. Grandis V and Lyrical Dota. Come back to you soon on this channel.